We apologize for the technical difficulties. There may be a little echo for this session. Our next speaker is Jennifer Haywood. Jennifer is a crowd favorite, and when she joined us at our last Northern Michigan HIV Summit, we knew we had to invite her back. She's been a social worker and addiction specialist since 1996 and trains professionals in the areas of mental health, diagnosis, supervision, ethics, addictions, and motivational interviewing. She has been teaching at The Ohio State University in the social work program since 2003 and currently holds a full-time lecturer position. Today, Jennifer will share insights on tackling the struggle with self-care during challenging times. Please welcome Jennifer Haywood.
So am I not seeing any faces?
No, we're live streaming to a platform.
Okay. All right. So welcome, everybody. I am echoing because I had to call in on my own phone since the sound is not working. So I don't know how this is going to go. I'm going to do my very best. I also have never trained a group I can't see. So I can't see you, and I hear my own voice echoing. So I find it very ironic that my topic is dealing with challenging times. So here we are. I'm going to lecture for an hour. I'm going to share my screen. So bear with me while I do that. All right. And I'm hoping everybody sees my screen. Since I can't see all of you, I don't know what you can see. All right. Let's look at the chat. Can I mute my computer speakers? I don't even know how to do that. Let's look. Okay. All right, everyone, just bear with me. I am on speakerphone. Okay, is this better? I'll just have to hold my phone up. Not much. Okay, let's see. Okay, how's that? How's that? I find it's better for me. Much better. Okay. All right, everybody. Here we go. Talk about crazy times. All right, if anybody does want to talk to me, I'm going to grab a water. If anybody does want to talk to me, you can talk in the chat because I have the chat up as I'm talking a little bit about what's going on today. All right, so I was asked to talk a little bit about how I've been working with clients during the last year. And since we are kind of moving into kind of the next phase of COVID and people are still struggling, I know Michigan's still a state that's struggling a little bit with numbers. We decided to focus the topic a little bit just on self-care during challenging times. So you can look at this type of presentation through your own eyes, like how to take care of yourselves and how to look at what you need to do for yourselves as helping professionals. I know we kind of have a mix of types of people that are in the audience today. I remember being there a year and a half ago, so I remember the mix, all different healthcare professionals working with HIV. So what I want to do today is just talk a little bit through the lens that you feel like you need to look through. And so the lens that I think is important for me to do is to work with clients on how to deal with them taking care of themselves, but that can be really, really difficult. So I'm looking through a client lens, but you can look through your own lens and how to do some self-care during this time. So I have some slides, just a few slides today because we only go for an hour. I know that I go until 12:15. with zero interaction, I'm just going to kind of talk straight at all of you and kind of give you my presentation. But if anyone does want to cut in, I'm not sure that there's a ton of time now, but afterwards from 12:15 to 12:30, I'm going to be available in a room. Hopefully you all can hear me when I'm in that room. I'm going to be available for questions and comments. I'm going to make sure I plug in my phone now, since that's how you all are hearing me. We don't want my phone to die. Okay, so let's get started. So some of the things during the past year, I, as a clinician and supervising clinicians and teaching and training, we've all had to adapt to very, very different circumstances this year. And I've been asked to speak a few times on how I am helping my clients deal with what is going on when I personally am involved in the same pandemic. This might be the first time in all of our helping careers that we all are experiencing the same environmental experience as our clients are or our patients are, which can make a few things difficult for all of us. It can make it difficult to have appropriate boundaries. It can make it difficult for you to help people with something that you don't have a lot of knowledge about either. For the first time in a long time, I'm helping people with something that I don't know what's going to happen, and I have to kind of help comfort everybody else, not just in what the risks are now for them to walk the earth, because it's dangerous to, at least in those early days, but also how do you help people deal with these kinds of extra challenges that now are sitting kind of on top of the challenges that they already have? And how do you focus still on the needs that they had anyway, and then also during kind of a very changing, challenging, always morphing into something different as far as requirements go to leave your house, requirements go to the doctor, to go into a store, everything changes on a dime. And so helping clients kind of adjust. And what I like to call it is, this is what a one-liner that I typically use is, how do I create space and control for clients? How do I help them find the power and control in a situation that feels very powerless and very unknown? And so I'm going to move through a few of these slides. Some of it is going to ring a bell because I've talked a tiny bit with all of you about motivational interviewing, and you're going to feel that in these slides. I'm doing motivational interviewing whenever anybody is struggling in any way. And so this will be very much reminiscent of the little bits of MI I talked about when I came a year and a half ago in person. It will feel a little bit motivational interviewing like, and then I also kind of created some things that I say to my clients that are struggling with control and powerlessness. I kind of pulled from my background in addictions, because we talk a lot to my clients that are struggling with substance use, and some of your patients and clients are also. We talk a lot about being powerless over the disease of addiction. And so I used some of that language when I started talking with clients, especially in the early days when I was 100% on screen with them. I started asking them what they did have control over. And so some of this stuff that I give you today is going to be like specific one-liners and specific techniques that I use to help people feel like they have a little control back and they have a little power back. Most of the clients I talk to already struggle with all of the issues they're struggling with, and they already feel a sense of lack of control and powerlessness. So I've been telling all my groups that I speak with, how do we create space and control for our clients? Meaning, how do we help them figure out what they do have power over? So in times of extreme powerlessness, which a lot of us have experienced ourselves now in the past year, how do you manage fluctuating feelings, hopelessness, and change that may or not be your choice? And so what I often will do is I have kind of like a little 3-step process when I work with people who are struggling tremendously with feeling hopeless because of the unknown. So most of the time, in general, even before a pandemic, people feel very, very stuck anyway, very ambivalent for change, because there's so many reasons for them to want to meet their goals and change, but there's also many reasons for them to feel very stuck and not want to. And so that fierce ambivalence that most of us feel when we have to make a big change, reasons to change, reasons to stay the same, it became even more kind of difficult and more challenging in the past year, because now we have people that already struggled with hopelessness, already struggled with the future being unknown, and now that unknown is surrounding them, and other people feel it too. I know some of my clients actually would say things like, oh, well, now everybody else knows how I feel all the time, and they kind of made a little joke out of the feeling of powerlessness. Well, at least everybody else gets it. At least everybody else is stuck in their house now too, because I have felt stuck for a long time. So there was a weird shift with some of them where they felt like people got them a little more now, which was very interesting. But for the most part, people struggled even more because of the unknown and because of not knowing what is going to come next. And so I do work with people all the time on staying in the day and being very mindful of what you can control in the day. And I borrowed a lot of this stuff from addiction work, which all those one-liners like one day at a time. And if you have 1 foot in tomorrow and 1 foot in yesterday, you're not doing very well in today. And so I started with really processing with everybody. In the very first part of my session, I asked, first I empathized, and kind of like a little 3-step process. I don't know if anyone's taking notes today, but a 3-step process would be, step 1 would be empathize. And I'm sure you're all doing that anyway, but do the reflective listening even longer than you usually do. And reflecting feeling, reflecting content, and reflecting their ambivalence. Reflecting their, okay, maybe they know they need to leave to get their medication, but they're too scared to leave because they don't want to catch anything or get sick. And so they're fiercely ambivalent. Doing a lot of listening and reflecting, and doing a lot of listening first and talking second, is going to be really important during all this stuff. You're going to be reflectively listening a lot more than you normally do. I would say before you even ask a question or before you even get into what's going on, letting them talk and then reflecting feeling first and then reflecting content second for about 5 minutes. And before you even ask questions or ask them to tell you more, just really helping them feel heard and understood. And so that first step in empathy is reflecting so that someone feels heard by you. Because a lot of the times now in their own lives, no one's really listening as well as they used to, because everybody has their own stuff. And so being able to feel heard and understood, that universal need when someone's really feeling struggling and challenged, that's important. So empathy, listen first and talk second, and listen by doing the reflective listening, reflecting how people feel. It sounds like you're really struggling. Really being careful not to use any I statements. When you say things like, I understand, I think that can get misconstrued sometimes with people who are struggling, misconstrued as you saying you get exactly how they feel, and none of us do get exactly how our clients feel. So drop the use of I and make sure you're doing a lot of reflection, and that's the first step. The second step is looking at what you do and do not have power and control over. And so often I'll say to my clients, do you mind if I ask a few questions? And oh yes, ask me some questions. And I might ask them, give me at least 2 or 3 things that you feel like you have control over. And it can be really, really tiny things, like I have control over whether I take a walk outside. I have control over what time I wake up. I have control over what TV show I watch. I have control over when I brush my teeth or when I take a shower. It can be very, very low level ADLs. It does not have to be giant things. But I find that having someone process with you exactly what they do have control over, so that they can remember that even though they're powerless over a lot of things that are going on outside of themselves, they are powerful over more than they thought. And it's kind of like a strength-based, solution-focused way to go. And so I will have a client, I'll say to them, okay, this is what I say, let's create space for control and power. Let's find a place in your life where you have choice. and I have them list them all. And it could be like, what do I have for dinner? Or what do I order? Or what do I get delivered to me from Amazon? It could be anything at all. But the most important thing is about making sure that there's power and control that's listed so that they can remember that even in really difficult times, they still have choices. I think when people feel like there's no choice left, and that they're being controlled and told what to do by everybody else, that's when it can get really difficult. And then that can allow for decreased anxiety. Organization can go up, like they can get a little more organized and they can feel more in control of themselves. That can provide some relief. So first step is empathizing, lots of reflective listening, lots of reflecting feeling content, and then ambivalence. And then the second step is asking if they mind if you ask them questions about what they feel like they do have control over. And that can help decrease some anxiety. Sometimes I'll have them scale their anxiety for me on things that are going on before the session, 1 to 10 scale, 10 being the worst, 1 being the calmest they've ever felt. And then by the end of the session, I'll have them scale their anxiety. And 99% of the time, their anxiety's gotten a little bit better. And then I'll do some strength-based talk. And I'll say, okay, so tell me, what about our session helped you feel a little bit better by the end? And often they'll say, oh, because you reminded me that I have control over so many things. Oh, because you listened to me. Oh, nobody's listening to me anymore. They're kind of tired of me. You just let me just vent. You let me talk about everything. And then you can take notes on what worked. And so you can do what works next time. And I find that's really helpful because each individual client needs a little bit kind of a different formula from us. Some of my clients don't need me to say much at all. They just want to dump everything on the table, and then they feel like I'm the greatest thing ever because they got to dump. And some clients want me to be more solution focused. So the third step can often be coming up with a plan before you meet with somebody next on the couple things they're going to do differently to feel like they're in control. And using the word control and feeling less powerless can be really important when people are struggling. And so that's really helpful. Doing this for ourselves, our clients, and folks around us, how can we remain mentally healthy when helping others navigate trying times? So part of what we talked about me discussing today was not only how do we engage with our clients during really difficult times and help them take care of themselves, help them remember to take care of themselves, but to talk with them a little bit about what they feel like they can do despite everybody telling them all the things that they have to do or don't have to do. So kind of thinking about for ourselves, in order for us to go into these types of really difficult client interactions, being able to have our own kind of healthy baseline before we go in, and what do we need to do in order for ourselves to feel a little bit healthier during this time, because we're giving a lot of empathy and a lot of listening and a lot of steps and suggestions and feedback to clients. But what are we doing for ourselves to kind of maintain the kind of baseline we need? Because we are doing something we've never done in our known history, and which is dealing with kind of the similar environmental situation as our clients, but nobody's really engaging with us about taking care of us. And so how do we take care of ourselves during this time? And if I had you all interacting right now, I'd have you put it all in the chat. Tell me how you're taking care of yourselves right now. But I will tell you, in the early days of screen only, I came to work. I just set up a shop in my office, even though nobody was here. There were 2 other coworkers behind their doors, and just knowing there were other people around felt a lot better than working from home for me. And so sometimes it is about where can you find your choice and what can you do to feel a little bit better. And then, of course, with my clients, one of the hardest things for them was staying home because isolation creates relapse. And so I would have a client drinking on a screen call, which was really difficult. And so very, very early on, we had a lot of protocol, but we had clients come in very early on because we needed to see them. And so figuring out for you, what do you need to do for yourself to feel like you have some control? And we all know that movement, like needing to move our bodies, especially now that we're sitting so much more, is really important. And then, you know, being able to be flexible and being able to go with the flow, especially with all this technology stuff, In the last year, I've trained hundreds of times on screen, and I have done classes at OSU on screen, and I've done sessions on screen, and today was the first day that no one could hear me. So being able to really be flexible, and I always tell my students, when something doesn't work, don't panic. They can't start without me. So that's what happened today. We did figure it out. I've never had to call in on my phone before, but here we are. All right, the next slide gives you it's kind of a reminder slide about all the motivational interviewing skills I gave you a little taste last time, and I'm going to give you a little more this time. This, if you have never been trained in motivational interviewing for at least a 3 or 6 hour deal where it's you get about 30 skills. This is the modality of choice when you're helping people deal with challenge and more difficult times than usual, and how to take care of themselves. So I just want to kind of remind you of some of these motivational interviewing skills that that I'm using to engage with clients. I'm also using, I want to remind you, you can use these with your family members. These little tips are just ways to engage with people who are struggling emotionally, who are struggling with anger, who are struggling with depression, struggling with anxiety. These are just ways to help people feel heard and understood before they feel like someone's telling them what to do. And so you'll see the first 5 bullet points. I've already kind of gone over this a little bit in the first slide, but I'm going to go over it again. The first 5 bullet points have nothing to do with very much questioning or very much formula or goal setting. It has everything to do with reflecting back where somebody is. And so just remember that anytime someone is struggling, anytime you can build rapport with them. And so what I want to mention here, which is a little different than I usually mention, since we're talking about a very strange year plus that's been going on with all of us, is building rapport through self-disclosure. Typically in my world, I do very little self-disclosure, but that isn't that you can't. I'm just really careful about using I statements and talking about myself, because I find that most clients feel less heard when I'm talking about myself, but I will use it very specifically to make a point if I feel like it would create rapport. And so what has happened with my clients is all of my clients know that in 2019, my leg was broken and I felt powerless and I felt out of control and I felt stuck at home. And so during the rapport part of this kind of last challenging year, I did use a tiny bit of self-disclosure, as they would say, oh, you must really know how this feels to be stuck at home. You were stuck at home last year. What did you do to feel better, Jennifer, when you were stuck at home? And so there was a little space for some minor self-disclosure. And so because all of you are living a lot of the challenges that your clients are, and you can now relate with them, you can use a little bit of what you're doing. I always say to be very careful about how much self-disclosure and how much you talk about yourself, because that can end up not working or backfiring, because as soon as you use I, they might say, well, you're just not like me. I don't know why you would talk about yourself. So use it very sparingly and carefully. But I do think there is space to normalize feeling really, really bad about all of this and feeling anxious and feeling sad. I think sometimes when your clients or patients hear that, you know, you, who they respect and look up to and admire, as someone who helps them navigate through difficult times and someone who's been with them, I think it can be very powerful using self-disclosure in a way that helps them feel like they're not crazy. Because if you say things like, oh yeah, this is tough for all of us, it's kind of a crazy time, isn't it? We're kind of all stuck inside. Using the word we, I feel like they don't feel like it's just them that feels scared. And that can be very comforting. And so being able to find the balance between normalizing fear, but then still being a little bit more one up, one down. You don't want to you don't want them to think they can't trust you now to help them because you're all messed up too. So finding that interesting balance between being emotionally stable yourself for them, but then also normalizing that, you know what, you're not always doing really great either. That can help build a pretty strong rapport. I know that it has. In my case, I use a tiny bit and I try to search for balance. So showing empathy, resisting the writing reflex is a nice little tip I can throw out in this hour session, where somebody says something to you, one of your clients or patients says something that's not true. They might say, well, I heard that, you know, we can't go to the grocery store during this time of day because of this, this, and this. And you really want to correct them. And you really want to say, actually, that's not true. You actually can go during this time. During a lot of stress and struggle, correcting somebody's wrong early on can create a lot more stress. And so it's called resisting the writing reflex, where you resist the need to fix what they're saying. They might also say like, oh, all the support groups that I was going to in person, none of them are in Zoom. I can't even find anyone to help me. And you know for a fact there's some they can go on. But instead of just immediately saying, you know what, there are some on Zoom, you can say, you know what, this stuff must be so hard. All this transition, all this change, it's just so hard, isn't it? And then they say, oh yeah, it is so hard. And then you might move into, do you mind if I give you some information I just found out, because I think there might be some meetings that could help you. Oh, there are? I didn't realize that. And so how do we help someone, and this is what I call it, become ready to receive what we have to say? Most of us have a heart for fixing, and that's why we're in this business. We want to give people a formula. We want to give them steps. We want to help them get better. We know that if they do these 10 things, they're going to feel so much better, but man, they don't really want to. And so one of the most important things that I feel like that helps create that rapport and helps show empathy is when you just don't go in there with a lot of fixing in the beginning. When you're doing more listening and empathizing, which is how confusing everything is and how difficult everything is. And then as soon as you feel, and you can feel it, even if they're on the phone, I always say to people, you can feel their shoulders go down, because all of these skills on helping people when they're feeling challenged, all of these skills are kind of bringing them down on this 1 to 10 scale, 10 being the most stress they've ever felt, and 1 being the most calm. As you're listening first and talking second, and as you're building empathy by using reflective listening skills, and you're kind of waiting before you ask the questions, and then you're asking permission to ask questions. Do you mind if I ask some questions? By doing that, and by resisting the need to kind of fix what they're wrong about earlier on, you're going to pull I always call it pull their numbers down. So they're going to be like at a 10 when they start talking to you. And then you're going to do some reflecting feeling. Yeah, this is just so tough. Sounds like you're really struggling. And then you're going to reflect the story. You know, it sounds like you're telling me A, B, C, and D, and that sounds so difficult. And then you're going to just be very, very self-aware of reflecting and listening. And then you're going to ask, do you mind if I ask a few questions? And then you're going to get to the formula. You know, there's a few things I think could really help you out. Do you mind if I give you some information about them? And that's when you start saying, all right, let's make a little list of what you can control. What have you done today already that's been in your power? And using that lingo of power and control, so that as you move through the session and then you get to business, you know, what you have to talk about. Did you do your med appointment, and how did that go? And are you taking your meds, and all the stuff you have to do? If you can get their anxiety down from like a 10 to a 6 or a 5, then all the businessy stuff, all the things that you need to do during the session, they'll hear you in a different way. I call it, they'll be like ready to receive the information that you give them. So how do I help somebody feel more in control, more power, more kind of relaxed, less anxious, so that then when we talk about steps they can take, they're not totally overwhelmed? Because if you go into a session with ideas on how to help somebody feel better before they feel heard, you're trying to give someone ideas who might be at an 8 out of 10 on the anxiety scale, and they don't hear anything, you're just going to freak them out more. Like, I have to do all this stuff. So think about how the order of your session is about pulling down that energy so that they're ready to hear some of the things that you do have to talk to them about. I always say, just kind of wait till later. Don't be in a huge hurry to jump in. And I know that a lot of people who listen to me talk about some of these skills, they get really kind of worried, like, oh gosh, does this mean that our session is going to take forever? Does this mean it's going to be like a 2-hour session because I'm going to have to listen forever? And I'd argue that actually your session goes quicker, because if you listen and reflect and resist the writing reflex early on, they'll get in a place where they're ready to hear you and move forward a lot quicker than they would have if you had gone right in. And so I always argue that listening for 5 or 6 minutes speeds your session up, because then it's action time, as opposed to trying to help them take steps too early. And so think in your head, how do I help this person who's struggling tremendously with taking care of themselves, who's struggling tremendously with what's going on in the world? How do I help them feel more in control? Well, I need to do that by first helping them get ready to hear what I suggest. Because so many of us will say to clients, oh, if you would just exercise, it'll make your antidepressants work better. Because gosh, if you would just get your heart rate up 20 minutes 3 times a week, that would just help your antidepressant, your serotonin would lift. It would be so great. And they just kind of listen or look at you like you're nuts. Like, I don't even want to get out of bed. How am I supposed to exercise? So those big old great ideas never get heard. And so during really challenging times, I definitely feel like, for me, helping people just remember that controlling when they brush their teeth is a thing. And sometimes you have to whittle it back that far so that they feel empowered. How do you empower someone to feel like they are doing things for themselves? Because otherwise you can get very stuck in the muck. And then the last little bullet point on this slide says, ask permission to question, educate, and discuss. Just thinking about, like, what am I going to give these folks in 1 hour? Because usually I speak for 3 or more hours and have a lot of interaction. So to just talk at you for an hour, I was just really racking my brain. So the last little bullet point that I really want to stress is, when somebody is struggling, really struggling, one of the best things you can do is ask permission to do anything, because that creates space for control during the session. Anytime you say to a client, do you mind if I give you some information on some of the meetings you can go to online since you're missing in person? Do you mind if? And when you do that, it allows them to say whether they mind or not. And I think that can be really, really important, because then they're saying to you, oh, I absolutely want to hear what you have to say. And now they're choosing to hear what you have to say, and now what you say won't fall on silent ears. And so just throwing in those nuances, like, hey, do you mind if I give you some ideas? And then you let me know which ones work the best for you. Very much like on you, your choice. Your job is to help someone locate and clarify what works for them, not tell them what to do. So I'll say one-liners like, hey, I'm just on the train with you. I'm not driving it. You tell me if this works. Yeah, exercise is really tough. So instead of working out, really all you need is 20 minutes of heart rate up. Like, what could you do? Oh, I could just do jumping jacks. You could. What do you think? And so having this interaction about, what do you think? How do you feel? What would work for you? And I always say stuff like, if you try something and it doesn't work, don't do it again. Just try something else. Like, giving people permission to try something and then not like it, I think can be really, really important too. Okay, somebody's talking to me in the chat. Oh, hi, everybody. Oh, Animal Crossing. That's so funny. Isn't it really interesting how all of a sudden we're using games on our phones and all that kind of stuff? That's funny. Animal Crossing, The Sims 4. Whenever you can video talk with people, I know like video games, I know my adolescent clients, the fact that I raise teenage boys so I know what video games they're playing. They think that's the greatest thing ever. And so, and then exercise, I make a point to get outside regularly, even if I feel a lot of inertia to stay on the couch. And so absolutely. So as you're thinking about helping clients feel more motivated for self-care, think about what you actually are doing. And this is for us and for our clients. I always say to people, most of us are not internally motivated to do the healthy things. Like, I am not internally motivated to eat a salad. I am not internally motivated to exercise. I don't want to. I'm not internally motivated. Every now and then you come across someone that they go to the gym every day and they think it's the greatest thing ever. Most of us are not internally motivated, which means your clients probably aren't internally motivated. So helping them find an external carrot, external motivation. I said to my client the other day, I know you don't want to talk about college at all, but is there anything you think you can do to plant that motivation for yourself? It could be external. She's like, you know what? I think that I will look up the colleges and I will talk about them with my mom, but only if she agrees to go shopping with me. And I know that sounds nuts, but sometimes it's something that's totally like outside of the realm of the situation. But how can a client help feel motivated in an external way? To me, you can fake it till you make it. You don't have to want to do the right things, but if you find a motivator to get you to do the right things, that's all that matters. So Jennifer says all about the rapport. Absolutely. You have a rapport with somebody. I will say to people all the time, they see my marathon pictures. I'm a distance runner. And so I have a few marathon pictures in my office, but I don't talk about my running. And they'll say, oh gosh, you run because you must love running. And I'm like, oh no, I absolutely hate running. It's hard. I said, it's the hardest thing I'll ever do. I just like how I feel when I'm finished. That's the reason I do it. But in fact, I never go by myself because I hate it so much. The only way I'll go is if I plan with friends, because then I don't want to let my friends down. So the external motivator is that I'm going to go meet my friends and I don't want to stand them up. So I always give that as an example when clients say, well, you exercise because you like it. And I always say, I absolutely don't like it. And I never will. But I plant little carrots for myself to push myself to do it because I like how it feels at the end. So light bulbs go off when I say stuff like that. And they always look at me like, oh, I always just thought you liked it because of your pictures. I said, no, I just like finishing. And so giving them just some basic examples in your own life on how, you know what, you don't really want to do the right thing either, but you find reasons to do it because you know after it's done, it feels so much better. And so just being really kind of basically open on what you're doing in order to kind of weave in some self-care, I think can be very powerful in the rapport building stage, that you're not a super person. Like, you're being affected by everything too, and this is how you're dealing with it. But again, being very careful about getting stuck in the I statements. But I always say, I ask permission to educate. I ask permission to question. Do you mind if I ask you a few more questions? And I ask permission to discuss anything. I might even say, you know, I have had a couple other clients they really absolutely did not want to go on screen to do a support group, but they are actually finding that it's kind of nice because they are listening to an AA speaker while they're in their kitchen cooking, and now they can multitask. So I don't know, what do you think about that? And then I might have someone say, well, you know what, it's not as good as in person, but you're right. I can at least turn it on and it'll be something. And so asking permission to discuss kind of how other people are navigating this that have similar issues to them, that can help too. Pam says, oh, amen, sister. I only run so I can eat cheesecake and fit in my pants. You know what happens though? Like, I just turned 49 and now running does not fix the pants fitting. Like, I probably also need to watch the cheesecake too. There's a certain time in all of our lives that you probably shouldn't eat the junk anymore either. So, but that's funny. I love it. So yeah, some people run because they like to eat. So it's all about helping your folks that you're talking to and yourselves find the carrot. It does not have to be internal. It can be external. I think that's important to remember with any of your clients struggling with trying to make a step. I also will remind clients too, I use the one-liner a lot: for now, not forever. So a lot of the times, clients and patients get stuck because they think that the ideas that you're talking about, if they decide to go for it, then they're stuck. This happens with med compliance a lot. Well, Jennifer, if I agree to take the meds the doctor gives me, then I have to take meds. And I always kind of cock my head and I say, well, they're going to give you recommendations on how long to stick with them to see if they're helping. But if they're not helping, then tell them, and they'll switch them, change them, increase them. Things will move around. It's not in stone. And I think when people learn that things are not in stone, or I might say, if you try this, I do this with AA meetings all the time. If you try a meeting and you hate it, don't go back to that one. Why would you go back to that one? Try a different one. And so I think reminding, that's another creating space for control. Reminding people that even if they start something, they can stop it. And that makes them less scared to start. I might even do what's called prescribed short-term change. And I might say, you know what, try this for a week. And if you hate it, don't do it anymore. Or I might say, try this for a week and let me know how it goes. And then let's talk about the pros and cons together. And then you can decide if you want to move forward with it. And I always say things like, it's totally up to you. That's a huge one-liner I use. And so as you're helping people figure out how to get unstuck or how to take care of themselves, think about some of the things you do to trick yourselves. We're always tricking ourselves into choosing the right thing or doing something that's healthier, and helping your clients find that. So I'll use the term carrot, like, what's your carrot? Or don't worry, you don't have to want to do it, but is there something you can kind of promise yourself as a reward? In order to help my clients feel more in control, I teach them a lot of mindfulness and how to stay in the day. They feel a lot less overwhelmed when all they have to do is look at today. And we all know that from a 12-step world, if you're familiar with that. And so there are a million apps. I don't know if you all have ventured into all the different apps that you can do for meditation, but there's an app I know my clients like called I Am Sober. And what it does is they put in how much money they used to spend on substances each day. And then each day they're sober, it calculates how much they're saving. And that's a motivator. They're like, oh my gosh, I love seeing how much money I'm saving. It can be anything at all that helps someone take a healthy step. Anything that can help them. And technology has been our friends. I mean, it's not really my friend today, but I'm winging it, I think. I think I'm doing all right. It's not our best friends, but it's our friends now. It's the way we got to see each other all through last year. It's how everybody kept in touch. I mean, thank goodness for Netflix and all the other little things that gave us entertainment, because people would really, really stress and struggle if it wasn't for technology. So how do you help your clients use technology? And if it's about helping them become motivated to exercise, maybe it is about a Couch to 5K app. I mean, who knows what it could be, but people are absolutely attached to their phones. So if you could help people feel like that is a piece of what can motivate them to make some good self-care changes, whatever it takes. I know my clients are on all different apps, ritual apps, meditation apps, all that kind of stuff. All right, let's move to the next slide. Oh, look, perfect. Positive choices for our mental health. This can be about us, or I was trying to make these few slides for the hour about our clients and about our patients, but also if you're looking through the lens of your own self-care, you can kind of look through either filter, either lens as I'm talking. The first, positive choices for our mental health during this time. You can absolutely imagine what happened to my clients and my world through the last year when it came to self-medication. It actually became a joke in Ohio because our governor would go on and his name is DeWine, and it would be wine with DeWine. And that was like this big joke. And I'm telling you, my client suffered. I have one client I've been working with for 13 years. She was 9 years sober, and she relapsed during COVID. And I didn't even know for 6 months. She just didn't go to work anymore. She was home. She was isolated. She didn't go to AA anymore. And that was it. And so it was a really hard year for my folks because the rationalization that we're home anyway, we might as well have a drink, that fell on a lot of people. And while I do not judge people for having a glass of wine in the evenings, using it to self-medicate really created a lot of stress and struggle for people. And so the first bullet I have is recognizing your own red flags for progression to addiction to know how to navigate self-medication. And I always tell people, listen, what you do is absolutely your choice, but know your own susceptibility to progressing to problematic behaviors. Do you have genetics? Are you self-medicating depression or anxiety? Are you coming from a trauma background? Are you in chronic pain? You know, what are your red flags for using more than just social use? And so I call it purposeful use, which means why are you doing it? If you're having a glass of wine because you want that glass of Malbec with that steak, then you go for it. But if you're having a glass of wine because you're sad and anxious all day and you're doing it every day, and that's what you're doing to cope, that's when I say, you know, really challenge yourself to start with the healthy coping skills first before you go to self-medication. Just be self-aware. I don't have many red flags for addiction. I come from a family of no alcoholic fanatics, which is interesting. So I probably could get away with a drink or two. It just makes me sleepy. So that's not really my thing to do by myself, but really asking your clients to look at their own red flags for progression before they use substances as a way to feel better. And, you know, we would need a much longer training to talk about medical marijuana and all of that good stuff. But at the very least, people knowing their own red flags, what in their body, their mind, could push progression to a problematic level, for them, that's what I like to teach people so that they can make their own choices. Biggest red flags are genetics and self-medicating a mental health issue. If somebody already has depression and anxiety and bipolar and ADHD and they're not being treated in the right way, they're definitely going to struggle a lot. Then we have movement. Of course, we all know we should get off the couch. I mean, that absolutely does not take a rocket scientist. This is what I'll give you a little tip. I use a study. I ask permission to educate, but I will ask my clients, would you like to hear about a study that I know about that compared two groups of people with depression, college-age students. One group was on Prozac for 8 weeks, and one group did cardio 20 minutes, three days a week. That's it. 20 minutes cardio, 20 minutes heart rate up, 3 days a week, and one group took Prozac. And after 8 weeks, the cardio people felt better than the Prozac people. And so often I say to them, if you're on an antidepressant, all you got to do is 20 minutes, 3 days a week, and you are going to be changing your brain. I think a lot of people think that exercise means all the time, or it means they have to do it every day. A lot of people are all or nothing thinkers. I think a lot of us naturally can turn into all or nothing thinkers. Like if you have a donut in the morning, you're like, well, forget it. I ruined my diet. I'm eating crappy all day. A lot of us sit in an all or nothing thinking way. And if you can help your patients or clients recognize you don't have to do movement every day to feel better, it's actually very little amounts that would make you feel better. Most of my clients are like, oh, that's it? I can do that. And then I might say, try something for 20 minutes. If you hate it, don't do it again. Just keep talking to me about what works for you. And then if you don't like it, don't do it. And I always remind people it's their choice, because remember, at the end of the day, no one's going to do the positive, healthy thing if they don't pick it. So allowing them to pick it. So I might say, do you want to try it once this week and then tell me how it goes when you come back? And they might say, well, you said 3 times is what it takes to work. And so we call that arguing for change. And sometimes they'll argue with me and say, well, no, I have to do it 3 times for it to work. And I always chuckle like, oh, I kind of got you there. Meditation and mindfulness. I could do a 3-hour workshop on how to help people stay in the day, how to be very organized with your schedule so that it's all, or it doesn't mean don't look ahead, doesn't mean you don't get to get excited about a vacation in a month. But after you get excited about a vacation in a month, how do you bring it back to today? Because people who can't stay in the day, those are your anxious people. Anxiety resides in folks that are looking ahead, and depression resides in a lot of regret and like what already happened. And so if you have a super anxious client, it's usually because they're looking ahead. What's going to happen? What am I going to do? How am I going to do this? And so helping with that can be really helpful. Progressive relaxation, mindfulness, breathing, all kinds of good stuff. Of course, your clients, patients are often going to the doctor and getting blood draws, but I do know that a few of my clients, vitamin deficiencies, vitamin D specifically, and even though we're not MDs and we can't, well, I don't know who's on here. Maybe some of you are MDs or RNs, but I know I can't tell someone to take a vitamin, but I might tell them, go to your doctor and ask about doing some blood draws to see what you're deficient in, because that can really affect mood. And then of course, medication, developing healthy coping skills, and prescribe short-term change. So the most important thing that I want you to get out of this slide is for people who are kind of looking at you like maybe they might try one of these healthy things, always prescribe a short-term change action at the end of your session. So if you're going to see them in 3 weeks or a month, I don't know when you see your folks next, but I always say, you know what, try this a couple times before we meet next time, and then tell me whether you like it or don't like it. And if you don't like it, we'll switch it up. And that helps, again, create space for control. Anytime they can feel like they're choosing, they're picking, anytime you can come up with one-liners like it's totally up to you, that's what's going to help all of this move forward. All right. So I have like 6 minutes left. Anybody want to throw anything up in the chat as far as, since we do have a couple minutes left, anyone want to throw anything up, like a comment or a question or a thought about anything? Now's the time to do it. And then if anybody wants to ask any questions afterwards, hopefully we can get me into a little chat room or however that's going to go so that you can sit in there with me. Anybody have anything? Just have a couple minutes. Let's see. I'll give you instructions. Awesome. So there'll be an official question and answer session in 5 minutes. But if anybody has a comment or wants to throw anything out there anything that I kind of made you think about in the last 55 minutes, and you want the whole group to have the benefit of your comment or your question, now's the time. And then I'm going to take a peek if I missed anything. All right. I think that is all I have then.
Thank
And I
you
can
so
keep talking
much.
for hours.
Thank
You're
you
welcome.
so much, Jennifer. So we're going to take a quick 15-minute break. During that break, those of you who have questions for Jennifer can meet her in the room located in the networking lounge. So it's probably good that we're ending a little early so we can get Jennifer in there ready to go. So I'll give her instructions on how to do that. You can click there. You can get there by clicking the join session at 12:15. That will go live. So you can join the session. You'll sit at a table and you will be able to ask Jennifer more questions face to face. Thank you, Jennifer.
All right. I'm staying on this phone, right?